Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sharing Stories podcast. In this channel, we discuss books. Today, we have Uncharmed by Lucy Jane Wood. And, it's funny because usually when we talk about a happily ever after, there's this expectation of a very rigid, highly specific formula.
Okay, definitely.
It's almost like being handed a predetermined movie script the exact moment you are born.
Right.
You know the one. You meet the right person, you fall in love, you buy the house, the credits roll, and you are officially set for life.
And it is presented not just as an option, right? But as the ultimate non-negotiable destination of a successful life.
Yeah.
Like the cultural narrative is incredibly clean and binary and deeply comforting in its simplicity. You are either actively searching for the one or you have found them, and you are now existing in this state of perpetual unbothered happiness. There was absolutely zero room for in-between in that script.
Yeah, that total lack of wiggle room is exactly what turns it from a comforting promise into a suffocating straitjacket. I mean, you step into the real world and you try to act out this predetermined script, but the set keeps changing, the props are missing, and your co-stars are going completely off book.
Exactly. They're ad-libbing.
Right. And trying to force a real, chaotic, unpredictable life into those perfectly typed pages is a guaranteed recipe for making yourself utterly miserable.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Bring your book to life with AI. Plotsformovies.com helps you create movie-like trailers for your book, allowing filmmakers to visualize your story just the way you imagined it while writing. Enhance the storytelling experience to a whole new level with realistic characters, immersive voiceovers, and cinematic sound effects. No more boring stock images or generic clips. Captivate your audience, spark curiosity, make readers and filmmakers eager to explore more. Plotsformovies.com, where your story becomes cinema.
We end up culturally conditioned, starting from the very first fairy tales we consume as toddlers, to view any deviation from that path as a catastrophic personal failure.
Wow.
Like a messy breakup or a period of deep professional uncertainty, or even just a genuine desire to remain unattached. We interpret those not as normal phases of human development, but as defects. We assume the script is flawless, which leaves only one logical conclusion.
That we must be the ones who are broken.
Precisely.
Which perfectly frames our mission for today's deep dive. We are taking a stack of sources, book blurbs, thematic summaries, author background notes, and some highly insightful reader reviews to explore how Uncharmed by Lucy Jane Wood takes all those modern suffocating relationship expectations and just systematically dismantles them.
All while wrapping that deep thematic deconstruction inside a highly accessible contemporary romantic fantasy.
Yeah.
The sources highlight that this isn't some grim philosophical takedown of romance or a cynical rejection of love. Fundamentally, it's a story about what happens when the literal and metaphorical magic stops working and how you piece your identity back together in the aftermath.
It's an incredibly cozy autumnal exploration of chronic perfectionism. Now, for some quick context, our notes show it's set in the same universe as Wood's previous Sunday Times bestseller, Rewitched. But our sources make it abundantly clear that you do not need to have touched that first book to jump right into this one. It stands completely on its own as a narrative about swapping exhausting people-pleasing for genuine self-discovery.
And to really appreciate the unraveling of a character, though, you have to understand just how tightly wound the spool is at the very beginning.
Oh, absolutely.
The sources describe our protagonist Andromeda, or Annie Wildwood, as living a life entirely obscured by a curated haze of pink magic and impossibly high standards.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because I want to visualize what that actually looks like in practice. Annie is a chronic perfectionist, a people pleaser of the absolute highest order.
Yes.
The blurb tells us she has every single aspect of her life under white-knuckled control. She utilizes every potion, every carefully chosen outfit, every perfectly practiced smile to maintain total dominion over her reality. To me, it just screams highly curated social media influencer.
What's fascinating here is that it is the exact magical equivalent of the influencer aesthetic.
Right.
The kitchen is permanently spotless.
Yeah.
The artisanal matcha is steaming perfectly in a pristine beige mug. The lighting is always golden hour, and there isn't a single hair out of place.
A flawless aesthetic that requires an exhausting, invisible amount of labor just off camera to maintain. It's that frantic, sweaty scrubbing before the ring light goes on. It's the 45 different takes to get the casual, candid smile looking perfectly effortless. That is Annie's daily existence. She's just doing it with spell work instead of an iPhone.
And the way the author utilizes magic as a metaphor here is a massive departure from standard fantasy tropes. Like, In most world-building, magic is sheer escapism, right? It's a tool to slay a monster or travel across dimensions or acquire immense power.
Right, it's a superpower.
Exactly. But in Uncharmed, magic represents the heavy, crushing expectations people place on themselves to project perfection to the outside world.
Oh, wow.
Annie's flawless existence isn't a sign of her immense magical power. It's a desperate, exhausting defense mechanism.
So she is essentially using magic as high-end concealer to paper over the cracks in her psychological facade.
Yes.
Because if she lets the magic slip, if she lets anyone see her sweat or stumble or struggle, the entire illusion shatters. People might realize she hasn't actually figured out the perfect script.
And the magic actively reinforces her emotional barricades.
Yeah.
Chasing this idealized version of happiness and absolute control is what prevents her from engaging with reality.
Yeah.
It's a coping strategy that she has allowed to consume her entire personality. She isn't living her life. She is managing her PR.
Which means the narrative structure demands a catalyst. You cannot have a character performing that intensely without introducing a variable that absolutely refuses to be curated or managed.
No, you can't.
And that catalyst arrives in the form of a character named Maeve.
Maeve being a troubled teenage witch with extraordinary, largely uncontained magical powers.
Oh, man. Which has to be the absolute ultimate nightmare scenario for a control freak.
Oh, totally.
You cannot curate a volatile teenager on a good day, add immense, unpredictable magical power to typical teenage angst, and you've basically tossed a live firecracker into Annie's pristine beige influencer kitchen.
Yep.
Her charmed existence is instantly thrown into absolute chaos.
Because Maeve is the physical embodiment of the messy, unvarnished reality that the fairy tale script ignores. She forces Annie out of her isolated pink bubble, because Annie's standard toolkit, the perfectly brewed potions, the placating smiles, the forced pleasantries, it simply bounces off genuine, raw, unrefined emotion. Maeve cannot be managed by a practiced smile.
And this total loss of control forces Annie physically out of her curated space.
Yeah.
She and this chaotic teenager end up displaced with nowhere to go, which lands them in a remote cabin. As one of the reader reviews noted, this relocation is the moment her life begins to unravel in the best possible way.
Yeah.
They essentially become accidental squatters.
Furthermore, the cabin isn't an abandoned, empty retreat. It belongs to Hal, a notoriously grumpy warlock who comes home to find these two wildly unexpected guests occupying his private sanctuary.
The dynamic this creates is brilliant. You have the incredibly anxious perfectionist trying to hold everything together, the chaotic headstrong teen who refuses to be managed, and the deeply annoyed loner warlock who just wants his house back.
It's a great setup.
The sources frequently highlight how this setup blossoms into a heartwarming found family trio.
And it functions so effectively precisely because none of these three individuals would ever voluntarily choose to spend time together under normal societal circumstances.
Right.
They are shoved into close proximity, far away from the rigid structures and expectations of their normal magical society. That isolation strips away their usual social masks. Hal's blunt, grumpy nature is the perfect foil that cuts straight through Annie's polished, people-pleasing defenses.
Which naturally sets the stage for a slow-burn romance between Annie and Hal. One reviewer specifically praised the book for bringing a perfect mix of pastry and magic to the narrative. And while I love a cozy, pastry-filled romance as much as anyone, here's where it gets really interesting for me. I have to push back a little on the core premise here based on what we're discussing.
Okay, let's hear the critique.
Well, if this deep dive and this book are fundamentally about rejecting this, finding your soulmate as a fix-all narrative, if we are actively deconstructing the fairy tale, doesn't introducing a slow burn romance with a grumpy warlock just swap out one fairy tale trope for another? Aren't we just trading the shiny Prince Charming on a white horse for the brooding grumpy warlock in a rustic cabin? How is that actually deconstructing the romance formula?
That is the exact trap a lesser novel would fall right into. And it's a very sharp critique of the cozy romance genre at large. But diving into the thematic summaries, we can see exactly how Uncharmed actively subverts that expectation.
Okay, how so?
The book doesn't argue that love itself is bad. It intensely questions the mechanism of love as a cure. Finding the right person in this story doesn't automatically fix Annie's internal chaos.
So we aren't looking at a situation where his mere brooding presence just magically smooths out her anxiety and cures her perfectionism?
Far from it. In fact, her relationship with Hal forces Annie into a corner where she has to confront her own assumptions even more brutally.
Oh, I see.
Remember how her magic, her people-pleasing, fails to manage Maeve? It fails on Hal, too. Hal doesn't want a perfectly curated partner. He is actively annoyed by the performance.
Because he is so blunt and unimpressed by her facade, she literally cannot use her usual coping mechanisms around him. She can't fix his grumpiness with a potion or curate his mood with a perfectly timed compliment. She is forced to just exist messily and authentically in his presence.
And that is the exact mechanism for her growth. By existing in that messy, uncurated space, she learns the crucial psychological distinction between wanting someone and needing someone to validate her existence.
Oh, that's a huge distinction.
Yeah, the romance doesn't swoop in to solve her internal issues. It acts as a very clear, sometimes uncomfortable mirror reflecting them back to her.
Because when you need someone, they are basically just a prop in your script. You are using them to fill a hole in your own identity. But when you want someone, you are already whole on your own, and they just add to the joy.
Precisely. She realizes that staying in an imperfect dynamic or frantically holding out for a flawless one completely misses the point of life. The narrative arc brings her to the realization that her life doesn't have to neatly map onto someone else's idea of a perfect ending. Hal is undeniably a wonderful supportive addition to her life. But the text is clear. He is not the solution to her soul. She has to do the heavy emotional lifting herself.
Which means distinguishing genuine, enduring love, which is inherently messy, requires deep compromise and doesn't always look photogenic from the sterile plastic fantasy of what love is supposed to be, according to the cultural script.
Exactly. And that internal uncoupling of self-worth from romantic validation is just half the battle. Perfectionism, after all, isn't something we are born with. It is taught and reinforced.
Yeah, definitely.
The story intelligently expands the focus from Annie's isolated personal relationships to the external structural pressure she faces in the broader magical world.
The societal pressure cooker.
Yes.
The sources place a massive amount of emphasis on the story weaving in coven politics and secret society drama.
And these elements serve a brilliant thematic purpose. They demonstrate that even in a fantastical world overflowing with literal enchantments, spells and potions, appearances and societal expectations are every bit as tricky, rigid, and manipulative as magic itself.
It feels like the coven is a direct stand-in for toxic corporate culture, or the endless treadmill of societal milestones. The pressure to conform, to present a certain unblemished image of success, to achieve specific magical ranks by a certain age, it's basically magical corporate ladder climbing.
Oh, it really is.
It's high school clique dynamics, but with pointy hats and severe social consequences.
The coven demands an impossible standard of perfection, weaponizing gossip status and exclusion. In the exact same way our own society demands that we hit arbitrary milestones. We're expected to secure the high-paying, prestigious job by 25 home, the flawless photogenic partner by 30, and the impeccably decorated house shortly after.
And if you stumble on that timeline, the coven or society judges you as fundamentally lacking. It's fascinating how deeply readers resonated with this specific aspect.
Yeah.
A review from the Darling Desi YouTube channel highlighted that many readers actually preferred Uncharmed to the first book precisely because it champions being messy, real, and honest over being perfect, both in how you practice magic and how you live your life.
Watching Annie navigate those immense external pressures while simultaneously learning to trust her own internal compass provides the emotional catharsis for the reader.
Right.
She has to consciously decide to stop contorting herself to fit the coven's impossible mold, leaning instead on the unvarnished, authentic support she finds in Hal and Maeve.
So what does this all mean for the listener, for the person who genuinely loves a good romance, who absolutely adores the aesthetic of magic and coziness, but feels entirely suffocated by the constant ticking clock of societal milestones? What is the ultimate takeaway from this deconstruction?
Well, if we connect all these thematic threads, the book advocates for a highly nuanced, mature perspective. It argues passionately that a relationship can be a profoundly beautiful, enriching part of your life, much like Annie and Hal's slow burn, without being the sole source of your happiness or the singular metric of your success as a human being.
And conversely, it asserts that being single or being deeply uncertain about where your life or career is heading does not mean your existence is a tragedy or a failure. It's about taking back the pen, ripping up the predetermined script, and refusing to let anyone else dictate your value.
It requires building the quiet confidence to figure out what you actually desire, without letting your family, your peers, your coven, or those deeply ingrained fairy tale expectations make the choice for you.
Yeah.
A life doesn't require a neat, perfectly tied bow to be deeply meaningful.
Now, on paper, tackling these incredibly heavy themes like chronic perfectionism, the crushing weight of societal pressure, uncoupling self-worth from romantic validation, dismantling the fairy tale, it could easily feel like slogging through a dense, depressing textbook on existential dread.
Oh, yeah, it could.
But every single source we have insists this book is the exact opposite of a heavy read.
The tone is universally praised across our materials as warm, whimsical, romantic, and deeply emotionally reflective.
One reviewer described the reading experience as being akin to a cup of spiced tea on a crisp fall morning. It's pure autumnal bliss, and a massive amount of that success comes down to the author's specific voice. We have some great background notes on Lucy Jane Wood that explain a lot about why this works.
She is an established online content creator, a voracious reader, and a self-described coziness seeker. Originally from the Wirral, she is now based in London.
Usually found with a giant steaming coffee in one hand, being aggressively headbutted by her cat.
Yeah.
It's a wonderfully relatable, grounded image of the author, and her specific writing style is what makes this book work so well. She manages to wrap a bitter pill of existential dread in a warm, flaky pastry. You don't even realize you're doing the heavy emotional lifting until you've already swallowed it and started processing the lesson.
That pastry metaphor is incredibly apt, and it raises a crucial point about why the cozy fantasy genre is experiencing such a massive cultural boom right now. The humor, the whimsy, and the sheer charm of the magical premise in Uncharmed serve a very specific, highly effective psychological function. They lower the reader's cognitive defenses.
That makes total sense, because if I'm sitting down to read a heavy nonfiction psychology book about relationship dynamics and overcoming perfectionism, my guard is immediately up.
Exactly.
I feel analyzed, maybe a bit defensive if the text hits a little too close to my own insecurities. But if I'm just reading about a grumpy warlock's exasperated reaction to a chaotic teenage witch magically blowing up his kitchen, I'm just enjoying the ride.
You are relaxed, you are entertained, and therefore you are entirely open. The escapism inherent in the fantasy setting creates a safe container for real, uncomfortable self-discovery.
Wow, yeah.
You find yourself questioning your own happily ever after scripts, examining your own perfectionist tendencies, without ever feeling like you are sitting through a lecture. The magical elements provide the charm, while the emotional core handles the very grounded, recognizable struggles of contemporary adulthood.
It's a masterful balancing act. It truly is a celebration of abandoning the exhausting performance of people-pleasing in favor of genuine, messy self-discovery.
Yeah.
The story proves that you do not need that fairy tale ending, that rigid, flawlessly formatted script to have a beautiful life. Your life can be chaotic, completely off-script, filled with unexpected squatters in a remote cabin, and still be profoundly meaningful.
And magical in its own distinct, uncurated way. Annie's journey illustrates that losing the illusion of perfection isn't a tragedy. The moment the perfect facade shatters is actually the moment a real, authentic life can finally begin.
So for all the listeners out there, I want you to apply this to your own world. Consider the script you are currently working from. Which areas of your life are being driven by a frantic desire for a perfect ending, rather than finding joy in your messy present reality? Are you white-knuckling your way through a role someone else wrote for you, desperately trying to maintain a haze of pink and impossibly high standards?
Yeah.
Think about that for a second, because it might just be time to let that script unravel in the best possible way.
To close out our deep dive today, let's circle back to that idea of the rigid movie script we started with. If a happily ever after isn't a permanent static destination that we achieve simply by following the romantic rules or casting the perfect spell, perhaps it is simply the daily deliberate practice of ripping up the script entirely, of learning to sit comfortably in our own messy, beautifully uncharmed reality.
That is a wonderful thought to leave off on. We at sharingstoriespodcast are showcasing books by Indian authors through the hashtag Pushing Indian Authors campaign. This content is supported by plots4movies.com, an AI-enabled book trailer platform where you can watch one-minute trailer of the book to understand the book better before you buy it.
Yes, so please consider subscribing and supporting the channel. We highly urge you to buy this book and read it from the link in the description.
And before you go, drop a comment below and let us know your favorite book by an Indian author. We'd love to read your recommendations. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Bye, guys.